Have we got Knowles? Ah!
Hey!
There he is. She is the star of Another Kingdom, not to mention the Michael Knowles Show.
Come on. It is pretty cool. We did get a bunch of tweets over the weekend. It was a tough one for Charles Manson. He didn't listen. But, obviously the new episode came out. A lot of people listened to it. And you can get it on Stitcher, Google Play, or iTunes, wherever fine narrative podcasts from the right-wing conspiracy are downloaded.
I looked at it, and it had over 700 five-star reviews.
This was the shocking point.
Yes.
I do like the one that Hillary Clinton gave us that said, I don't like Michael Knowles, get him out of there, But that's fine. Hillary is entitled to her free speech. Even though she wanted to curtail our free speech, she's entitled to her own.
No, the reviews have been great, and the reviews for even you have been great. Of course, they don't know you personally, or they wouldn't be. People keep saying, "Are you putting up the reviews?" And I thought, I don't know anybody who would say anything nice about you.
That's true. Yeah. If it were Drew writing the reviews, or like Sweet Little Elisa or somebody, it'd all be like 3 stars. 5 for you, 1 for me.
Exactly.
Evens out.
Anyway, it's been a tremendous success, and it's been just a joy doing it. So, the
really nice thing about it is that it means 2 things. One, conservatives aren't Philistines when it comes to art.
Yes, it's possible.
Which is great, And the other is that conservatives can produce art that Hollywood can keep the gates closed, they can keep the blacklist, they can keep conservatives out, but we can still make art that will be listened to by 20,000, 30,000 people per episode.
One of the reasons I keep pleading with my audience and your audience to sign up for this thing and subscribe is because if we get enough success with it, I swear I will push this down Hollywood's throat. I will force them to make it, but I need a lot of support, a lot of more, audience, and then I'll just cram it down there.
It would be, for a year, we're at Thanksgiving. I have a lot to be thankful for this year. It's been a very nice year to me. And to begin the year by shoving a blank book mocking Democrats down New York Publishing's throat, and then to end the year by shoving a conservative, written by conservatives, non-politically correct fantasy down Hollywood's throat, it would be the perfect bookend. We got to do it. We got to make it happen.
We'd have a parade. All right, let's talk about Thanksgiving. Your show comes on after mine. You will be talking about Thanksgiving at length, but I want to give people a preview because one of the things I've been wondering about, there are all these myths about Thanksgiving. And every year, Rush Limbaugh tells this story about how it was to celebrate the end of communism or something like this. And I've always wondered, is there any truth to this? Is that a true story? I mean, I know everything Rush says is true.
It is true by the very fact of Rush saying
it becomes true when he says it, yes.
I wondered this too. Obviously, I repeated the story blindly for years without really looking into it. But I've wondered too, is that the true story? So I looked into it, and the short answer is yes, it is true. The left has tried to attack this version of the story. They point out that the first Thanksgiving that we think of as Thanksgiving was in 1621, 1 year after the Pilgrims sailed, and the Indians came, and there were a lot of Indians who showed up. Everybody ate turkey and duck and goose, and the Indians brought some deer that they had just killed, and they had a nice time. But this was just a regular harvest festival. It happened around this time of year, late September, early October. It was a regular harvest festival. They had these in England, and in many ways, this wasn't a thanks for the abundance that they'd gotten from their harvest. It was the last meal of a condemned man because they knew that this winter was going to be brutal. They didn't have enough food to live, and it ended up being a very difficult winter. It became a very difficult winter for a few reasons. One of which is that the Pilgrims tried communism. When they got there, and that's not an exaggeration, by the way. I was reading William Bradford, Governor Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation last night, the definitive account of the Plymouth era written by the governor of the colony. And he talks at length about the communal plan, the common course, frequently referred to as communism. And he says, quote, "At length, after much debate of things, the governor gave way that they should set corn every man for his own particular, and in that regard trust to themselves. In all other things, they would do it as they did before, but instead of dividing up the land for everybody, they would give each man his own parcel of land that he had to work." They had this problem where a lot of people were saying, "Oh, I'm sick, I'm tired, I'm coming down with some
Under
sickness."
communism, you mean? People wouldn't work.
They wouldn't work. They would
surprise.
stay home. They wouldn't work the fields. People started to get a little angry. So Bradford writes, This had very good success, for it made all hands very industrious, so as much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been by any means the governor or any other could use, and saved him a great deal of trouble, and gave far better consent. The women now willingly went into the field and took their little ones with them to set corn, which before would allege weakness and inability. They'd say, oh, and they didn't want to go out. And Bradford, so as we don't miss the point, so as we don't think he's talking about someone else, he gets very explicit. He says, the experience that was had in this common course and condition, tried sundry years, and that amongst godly and sober men, may well evince the vanity of that conceit of Plato's and other ancients, applauded by some of later times, applauded by Karl Marx of even later times than Bradford is writing, that the taking away of property and bringing in community into a commonwealth would make them happy and flourishing, as if they were wiser than God.
Oh, wow.
He even talks about how, it bred discontent everywhere, because you'd have a few women left in the colony, and they would be forced to do all the work for all of the men. And for men's wives to be commanded to do service for other men, as dressing their meat, washing their clothes, etc., they deemed it a kind of slavery. Neither could many husbands well brook it. So the husbands didn't like their wives being used either. And I take special interest in this because I'm descended from 4 of these people.
You are?
So yeah, believe it or not, I know I look swarthy and Sicilian, but I also am descended from one pilgrim, a guy named Dr. Samuel Fuller, the doctor of the colony, and 3 of the strangers. So they were not separatists, they were not religious zealots, they just wanted to come and have a new life and make a little bit of money. And those guys were Stephen Hopkins, who had earlier been on a shipwreck in Bermuda, which is what Shakespeare's The Tempest is based on. He was a mutineer.
You're related to one of the guys that they based The Tempest?
I am. I'm
Caliban, right?
Direct descendant. I'm a direct descendant of Caliban. But he was a mutineer, and he caused a lot of trouble on the Mayflower. Then there was another guy, Francis Eaton. He was fine. And then John Billington, who Bradford said was one of the most profanest men he'd ever met. He said his family was full of degenerates. Yeah, that was the direct line. And I think he was thrown into the stocks a number of times, almost killed. Yeah, so that's the group that we come from.
Okay, so they did try communism and find it didn't work. So that's
they found it didn't work. And to Rush's point, this was the first time it was called Thanksgiving.
Okay.
There was an edict from the secular government, from Governor Bradford, that said we will celebrate Thanksgiving, which was really, I suppose, the 3rd Thanksgiving. It was the 3rd year in 1623. Rush, as always, absolutely right.
Okay.
And there's so much disinformation about Thanksgiving. I'm going to go into it. I'm going to do a full show on it on Wednesday, and we'll air it Thursday too.
Okay.
But there's this idea that we came here. The Indians were very nice to us. They gave us corn. They were all united. They were just charitable, taught us how to eat, and then we just butchered all of them. And that was our thank you to them. And it's so paternalistic. It's so condescending. First of all, it's anti-historical to say that these were united tribes. They weren't united for more than 30-mile stretches.
Right.
But it's so condescending to say that they were all peaceful and naive. There was nothing naive about these people. They dealt with Europeans a little bit before, and especially that they'd massacred some French and some Englishmen, and they were smart though, and they were relatively sophisticated statesmen, and so they used the arrival of the English to get an advantage over one tribe or to consolidate power in this area, and the English used them to some advantage too. But it was
so they were people.
They were people. They were people. They were political actors who went to war and were diplomatic and gave each other considerable respect. And the real story is just much more complicated than the ridiculous left-wing narrative about it. And by the way, there was a relative peace for well over 50 years.
Right.
There was a relative peace for a long time until poor decisions were made, particularly by the child of Massasoit, who was our ally and who benefited greatly from the English, and the English benefited greatly from him. This Indian made a bad calculation, and it didn't work out very well for his tribe. But this peace endured for half of a century.
Is it true that when the Pilgrims arrived, they found an Indian who spoke English?
Talk about the divine providence.
That story has always struck me as divine providence.
It's really bizarre. It's even more bizarre than you think it is. So they were aiming for New York, for the mouth of the Hudson River. They get blown way off course, and the master of the ship knew they were blown off course, but they weren't blown off course enough to end up at Boston Harbor. They weren't blown off course enough to end up at a nice harbor. They ended up off of Cape Cod. They get off the boat, and some Indians start to attack them, basically. They found huge stores of corn, just right where just beautiful stores of corn where they were, and not a lot of people. But they end up getting attacked. They go a little bit further, end up at Plymouth. The thing they notice is that the fields are completely cleared. They're totally clear. They're ready for agriculture. But all they find are the whitened bones of the dead. Excuse me. Because a plague had wiped out virtually the entire tribes of this area. Just within the previous 2 years. So the land is cleared for them, all is peaceful, all is nice. They're waiting for they'd had a little skirmish with the Indians. They then see one Indian boldly walk toward them alone. They get their muskets ready, they don't know what to do. He just keeps walking toward them and he says 2 words. Welcome, Englishman. His name is Samoset, possibly Somerset, an English version. He happened to be visiting from Maine, where he had run into a couple of English fishermen in a couple years previously. So he was just visiting. The rest of the tribe did not speak English. But then out comes Squanto, who was a prisoner of the chief Massasoit. Squanto had been taken by John Smith, the English explorer, brought to Spain, escaped somehow, it might have been smuggled out by monks, ends up in London, then makes it back on another ship to the New World, ends up exactly where the Pilgrims land.
Accidentally land.
Yeah. Not at the place they wanted to, not at the place they should have, but exactly where they do land. And he comes out and speaks basically perfect English to them, and converses, talks to them about Spain, talks to them about various neighborhoods in London, and also then uses them to for his own political machinations. But basically the one guy in the hemisphere that speaks fluent English ends up exactly where the Pilgrims accidentally land.
Unbelievable. It is an unbelievable story. Michael Knowles, the Michael Knowles Show is coming up after this. It's always good talking to you, Knowles. I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye. You know, I was in church this Sunday. The reading was the parable of the talents. And if you don't know the parable of the talents, it's where we get the word talent. A talent was a block of silver, and a block of silver. And it's a parable about a guy who gives each of his servants a certain number of talents. One he gives 1 talent, one he gives 2, one he gives 5. I don't know. I can't remember what it is. And he goes away, and when he comes back, one of them has invested his 5 talents and made 5 more, and he says, well done, you've done a great job. And the other has invested his 2 talents and made 2 more, and he says, great, good job, you did what you could with what you had. And the guy with 1 talent was so afraid of losing it, he buried it in the ground, and the master, who kind of represents God in the story, says, that was the wrong thing to do. You could have at least invested it and given me interest on this. And I was thinking, gee, God is a capitalist, he's obviously a capitalist. So when they tried communism, said we thought we were wiser than God, they were actually right. God is a capitalist. He invests in us to use our talents, and that's, like I said, that's where you get the word talent as we use it. He invests in us, our talents. He expects a return on his money. He doesn't work for it. He just gives us the dough, just like any capitalist.